This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, this is Bernd Welter on behalf of PDD Server Consulting, and the video I wanted to show you today is about high-performance routing being applied in xRoute server. We have several videos where we show you the result performance behavior of high-performance routing in the context of xTour or xDima, but today I want to use xRoute. So the algorithm under the roof is still a distance matrix calculation. And what I want to show you is the comparison between the result of traditional performance result between traditional routing without high performance routing being applied and high performance routing. What you should understand before we do these tests now is on my environment, I have installed a 2018 2H here map, and I have pre-processed a search graph, which is called dimaTruck. What we also have here is in my editor, you can see that this is the XML profile that defines the dimaTruck routing options. So based on this kind of XML profile, the search graph was pre-processed. What is also important, there is just a second profile, which is called truckFast. Regular base parameters, nothing specific, but I do not have a search graph for this profile. So what I want to show now in the next seconds is that if I use a raw request runner, here you can see this is a distance matrix call. So I have to provide two arrays of start points and destination points without any routing options. And then I use the caller context profile to specify whether I want to use the profile with the search graph, which is dimaTruck, or the other profile without the search graph, which is truckFast or truckSlow or any one of the others, because the only search graph I have at the moment is dimaTruck. Okay, so what happens if I calculate this request? It takes a few seconds to get the result. By the way, about the structure of the request, each one of these arrays is based on about 30 coordinates. So the number of route info objects in the response is somewhere around 900. Let me go to the end of the request, and then you see, okay, 900. Usually the last entry and the first entry is with distance and time of 0, which makes sense. Both arrays are equal. So the first request is from A to A, and the last request is from Z to Z, or the last relation is from Z to Z. What you have seen is it just took a very short period of time to calculate these 900 routings. And what I want to change now is just switch to truckFast. Here we go. I start the transaction. In parallel, I go to the management console of this server, and you can see that the progress requires about 1 or 2 seconds for each one-to-many routings. So there is not 900 routings, it's 30 routings of a structure 1 to 30. That's important to understand. This is why we calculate 30 rows. And this is now based on traditional routing. Okay, might take some time. Let me just fill that time to show you the configuration of my, oh, not this one, of my, the log files of my xRoute server. Here we go, transaction is done. And if we look at the last 2 transactions started here, for example, then we see in this transaction, the logging mentions that this transaction was based on high performance routing. So that was the first call, the quick one. And once we are done with our transaction, which still might take about 20 seconds, then I will get another logging line, which tells me that there was a long-lasting transaction, which was without high-performance routing, and it It also gives me the timestamps so I can see how much time it took for that transaction to compute the result. So here we go, now it should be done. I still get a result, some different values, first one, last one, with 0 values. And it took about 1.5 minutes to compute that results. If we look into the log files, then we see this was the first call. This is the second one without high performance routing being mentioned. And here we can see the 90 seconds that it took for the whole transaction to be done, while it was about a bit less than 1 second for the quick approach. What is important for me, or what I want you to understand, is that the performance depends, or the benefit you can achieve with matrix routing is enormous. So 1.5 minutes instead of 1 second, that's a big difference. And the difference is much bigger if you do not compute 30 to 30, but maybe 100 to 100, because the complexity of the task grows in square mode. So that's important to understand. The second thing is that you can use high performance routing in xRoute under specific constraints. And one of the constraints is, if we look at the XML once again, is you cannot provide any additional routing option via the API. You cannot use routing options here as this kind of parameter, and you cannot specify a profile snippet. The reason for this is that if you want to use a search graph, which is the file with a size of 4 GB for European city map, then you can only use that search graph if you do not override some of the properties of the profile. That means the search graph was generated with exactly these routing options that are fixed in this XML file. You cannot start to override a single one of these properties. Not the emission class, not the speed value on a street segment or whatever. It has to be fixed. If you try to override one of these properties in the request, you will run into an error. So that's what I wanted to show you. And sometimes we have customers who try to apply high performance routing and wonder about the poor performance. But then when we look at the log files, we see you didn't really reach high performance routing. For some reason, you called the wrong profile or whatever, and this is why we calculated it in a traditional mode. So that was one important information. The other information I would like to give you today in that recording is, let me just try this on a very spontaneous mode. Remove in my well-known test client all additional options. As you've seen, it's forbidden to use them together with a search graph profile. Here we go, everything removed. Then we've got dimaTruck, and let me calculate a route from Sweden to Spain, Stockholm to Barcelona. So a single route using a truckFast, and we see here it took about 3 seconds to calculate that route. The client is not optimized for performance, but what you should see is that there is not a big difference between the high performance based routing, dimaTruck, truckFast. And the reason for this is that the specific benefit you achieve with high performance routing is, as I said, really depending on matrix routing. With matrix routing, you have a very large impact on performance. That's what I want to show during this demonstration. If you apply high performance routing in, let's say, single one-to-one routing, what you see here, requesting the polygon or the emissions and so on, you will not really benefit from the search graph. It could be even worse. You could lose time, because changing the temporary data like the search graph requires additional file handling, memory swapping, and these kind of effects, has negative impact on the performance of a one-to-one routing. So, and that's what I want you to keep in mind, not to expect a large performance boost in one-to-one routing with xRoute. You can expect a performance boost if you apply high performance routing in matrix calls. That's it. My name is Bernd Welter, and if you have questions about this, just get back to me. You will find my email in the description of the YouTube video. Thank you very much.